I am so frustrated because I had just recorded this video and my creator app froze and deleted it. And I was really happy with it first time through tonight, so I'm a little frustrated on the second time through. I left off on part 2 of my story with getting kicked out of Job Corps and selling drugs and not having somebody's death on my conscience because somebody else had turned me in. And to whoever that person is, if they ever see this, I am so grateful for that. Thank you. After I got kicked out of Job Corps, I wound up coming back home with my parents, and my choices didn't really improve from there. In fact, if anything, they probably got a little worse. I started making some friends that were making the same kind of decisions I was, and because of that, we all wound up getting in a lot more trouble a lot more regularly. I wound up in an alternative school, and I went to school half a day and I worked half a day. The requirement to participate in that alternative school was I had to maintain a job, so I did. And when I wasn't at that job and I decided not to go straight home after work, I was out making some bad choice, whether it was drugs or alcohol or just not being where I was supposed to be when I was supposed to be there. Communication between my parents and I was consistently failing across the board in a lot of aspects. In-person communication almost didn't exist, and at the beginning of time when cell phones were starting to become popular, it was hit and miss whether I answered it or not, which led to even more problems. Finally, when I was about 17 years old, I was presented with an opportunity to go into the military. Personally, I saw that opportunity as a fantastic escape. And in some ways it was. But in order to achieve getting into the military, I had to graduate from high school. And I had a lot of credits to make up to achieve that. So I wanted to join the military as a mechanic. I wanted to work on equipment for the military. I was unable, by less than a credit, to get all of the credits that I needed to make up made up. But that exit from that point in my life was so much more important than the job I was going to be doing that I stepped down from that job, got my GED, and went in as a heavy equipment transport operator. I did basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and it was June. So it was hot, it was humid, it rained almost as many days as it didn't, and that did not stop training. It just made everything was wet all summer long. I went from basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma to advanced training in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And it wasn't as hot, but it was just as humid, and it was very difficult to do that training there because we were coming in fall. So some days it was warm and some days it was cold, and some days it started out cold and some days it started out cold and got hot. But I made it through training, and I picked up a duty station in Fort Hood, Texas. So I got the first 3 stations I got in the military were shithole stations. They're all great, but of the possible stations, I got some real winners. So during the time from I started basic training to the time that I got to my duty station, I got to see my family one time, and that was when they came to Oklahoma for my basic training graduation. And we had one day that we could spend with our families, and I was so exhausted that I slept through that visit. There was very little visit and just me sleeping. So I'm sure for my family that was difficult because they drove a long ways to watch me sleep for 8 hours. And then after I got to my duty station, I think I got to take a vacation and come visit for a couple days, 3 days or a week, something like that. It wasn't very long. And then I was expected back at my duty station, and that was the first year I ever had spent a Christmas by myself. It was a hard year. As far as being transgender in the military or being different in the military, nobody's different in the military. When I was in, there was a don't ask, don't tell policy, and you didn't say anything, neither did anybody else. And when we were standing in formation, it didn't matter color, gender, ethnic background, sexual orientation. It did not make any difference. We were all green. That was it. Everybody you were standing next to was your equal, period. There was no other option. Which in a way was kind of affirming, because I got to stand on the same ground as other people, and I didn't have to worry about defending who I am or proving who I am. The military did one real bad thing for me though, and that was that uniform bought me a ticket into almost any facility I wanted to walk into and have a drink. And I drank a lot because I could. I could walk into the facility and have a drink, and they never bothered to check my ID. So it was really bad, because when I wasn't in uniform, I was drowning the fact that I wasn't in uniform. I can't really go into a lot of detail about some of the stuff that I participated in while I was in the military, but I met my first wife while I was in the military, and that whole situation started out on a red flag, and we neither one wanted to see that red flag. So that was a red flag that we should have observed, but we didn't, and we made some good memories out of it, but we made plenty of bad ones too. And I would love to say I was the entire fault there, but I wasn't. I definitely played more than my part though. So at this point I had stepped into a adult role with a childish mentality, and I wasn't ready to be an adult yet. And it showed. It showed through my actions, it showed through my behavior, it showed through my lack of experience in adulting, and it made life really hard for everybody besides me. Again. Part 3.